The rain came down hard that Thursday afternoon, washing the dust off the old highway and turning it slick with mud. Jack Miller, a 44-year-old mechanic with grease-stained hands and a heart too big for his own good, was closing up his tiny garage on Route 9 when he spotted the silver Mercedes parked awkwardly on the roadside shoulder. Hood up, hazard lights blinking. A woman, dressed in a soaked designer coat, stood beside it, waving her arms at passing cars. No one stopped. Jack sighed. He could have gone home. He had leftover chili waiting and an aching back that had been screaming since noon, but something about the way she looked not scared, just lost, made him pull over. She didn't introduce herself. She just looked at him with cautious hope. "I think it's the tire," she said. It was a blown-out rear tire, shredded from driving too long on low air. Jack had seen it 1,000 times. He popped his trunk, grabbed his jack and spare, and got to work, rain pouring over his shoulders, soaking through his flannel. She offered to hold the flashlight, apologized every 30 seconds, and admitted her phone was dead. When he was done, she reached into her bag and froze. I don't have my wallet. I must have left it at the gas station." Her voice cracked with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry." Jack just shrugged and smiled, wiping rain from his forehead with the back of his hand. "It's all right," he said. "Just do something kind for someone else down the road." Her eyes locked with his for a moment. Like no one had ever said that to her before. Like kindness was foreign. "Thank you," she whispered. And then she was gone. 3 days later, Jack's shop phone rang. A calm, clipped voice said, "Mr. Miller, you're requested at the Whitmore estate. Urgently." Jack frowned. The Whitmore estate. The richest family in 3 counties. "What for?" he asked. But the line had already gone dead. Jack pulled up to the gates of the Whitmore estate in his beat-up Ford pickup, still wearing the same oil-smeared coveralls he'd worn that morning. The front gates alone were bigger than his entire garage. He rubbed his hands together, nerves fluttering in his chest. A security guard stepped out of a small booth and gave Jack a once-over, not rude, just surprised. "You're Jack Miller?" he asked. Jack nodded. "Got a call about an urgent job." The guard spoke into his earpiece, listened, then waved him through. "Drive straight, park by the fountain." The driveway curved through towering oaks and perfectly trimmed hedges, revealing a white brick mansion with columns so wide Jack could barely wrap his arms around them. Everything about the place screamed money, old money. He parked, stepped out, and immediately felt out of place. The place was too clean, too quiet. He looked down at the grease under his fingernails and almost turned around. Before he could, the front door opened. A butler, yes, an actual butler, motioned him inside. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." Jack hesitated. What exactly needs fixing? The butler just smiled politely. "He'll explain." Inside, the mansion was like something out of a movie. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, grand staircase. Jack tried not to gape, but when a suit of armor stared back at him from the hallway, he couldn't help but chuckle. People really live like this. He was led into a sunroom overlooking a garden that could pass for a botanical exhibit. Seated at the far end was a man in a tailored suit, early 60s, imposing, sharp eyes. But there was something familiar about the woman beside him. She stood, walked forward, and Jack froze. It was her. The woman with the flat tire? But now she wasn't soaked and flustered. She was poised, composed, radiant. "Mr. Miller," she said, voice calm but warm. "My name is Evelyn Whitmore. My family owes you a debt, and we'd like to make it right." Jack blinked. "Ma'am, I just fixed a tire." Evelyn smiled. "No, Mr. Miller. You gave without expecting, and people like you are rare." Jack shifted uncomfortably in his chair, trying to make sense of the situation. He'd been in some strange places before: abandoned factories, rundown motels, even a few mansions, but this was a different level. He wasn't sure if he was supposed to be here, or if he should be here. Evelyn Whitmore, sitting across from him with an unsettling calmness, didn't seem to notice his discomfort. She was studying him like he was a puzzle piece, a deep curiosity in her eyes. The man beside her, her father, Jack assumed, leaned forward, folding his hands neatly on the table. "You're wondering why you're here, Mr. Miller," the older man said. His voice was deep, authoritative. Jack nodded, unsure if he should speak up or just let them continue. "We don't usually reach out to people like you," the man continued, "but you've made quite an impression on our daughter." Jack's mind scrambled. Daughter? The woman in front of him, the one who had been stranded in the rain. This was her family. It was almost too much to process. Evelyn smiled gently, noticing his confusion. "I understand. This is all unusual, but what you don't know, Mr. Miller, is that my family? My real family has been in the public eye for a long time, and there are things we've had to protect. Things I've had to protect." She stood up, walking to the window as the faint glow of sunset illuminated her face. There was something distant in her expression, something that made Jack uneasy. "You fixed my tire that day," she continued, her voice softening. "But it wasn't just a flat. It was a test." Jack blinked. A test. She turned to face him, her eyes now sharp, her demeanor shifting. "I wasn't just some woman stranded on the side of the road. Jack, I needed someone who could make the right choice, who could act with decency, without expecting something in return. And you did." Jack's stomach tightened. The weight of her words settled over him like a heavy blanket. "What are you saying?" Evelyn took a deep breath, as if she had been holding something back for far too long. "I'm not just a woman from a rich family. I'm not just Evelyn Whitmore. My real name is Charlotte Whitmore, and I'm the CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, a company that's been under the radar for decades, and that's where you come in." Jack stared at her, heart pounding. CEO. He thought back to the Mercedes, the calmness she had when she'd spoken to him. It all made sense now, in a twisted way. But this? She leaned forward, her voice lowering to a whisper. "There's a legacy I'm protecting. And we need someone who isn't afraid to do the dirty work, someone who doesn't care about money. Someone like you." Jack didn't know whether to be honored or terrified. He'd just fixed a tire. How was this even real? "I'm offering you a chance," she said, her eyes locking with his, "to be part of something much bigger than a simple mechanic's job, something that will change everything for you, if you're willing to take the risk." Jack opened his mouth to speak, but his words caught in his throat. "What exactly are you asking?" Evelyn smiled, the corners of her lips curling in a way that sent a chill down his spine. "I'm asking you to join me, to help protect Whitmore Enterprises from a threat that no one knows is coming." Jack swallowed hard. A threat. She stood up, the decision clear in her eyes. "You'll never be the same after this, and I need to know you're ready for what's next. Because the road ahead, it's not going to be easy." Jack was still processing the weight of her words when the door behind him opened. Another man stepped into the room, tall and sharply dressed, with a look in his eyes that made Jack instinctively stand up. This was no ordinary man. "Mr. Miller," the newcomer said, his voice clipped. "I trust you're ready to make a decision. This is your." Jack's mind raced, the room suddenly feeling smaller, tighter. The man who'd entered tall, dressed in a perfectly cut suit, looked like he stepped out of a high-stakes corporate meeting. There was an intensity in his eyes, a cold professionalism that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. He wasn't sure what he was stepping into, but it felt like he was already in too deep. The man extended his hand. "I'm Michael Fairfax. I've been handling sensitive matters for the Whitmore family, and I believe you and I can be of great use to each other, Mr. Miller." Jack hesitated, unsure of how to respond. This wasn't what he expected when he'd agreed to fix a tire for a stranger. A test, she had called it, a job offer. Now this. Evelyn, or Charlotte, watched him carefully, her face unreadable. I know this is a lot to take in, but sometimes the best opportunities come when you least expect them. Your skills, Jack, they're exactly what we need. The work you do, the way you think. It's exactly what Whitmore Enterprises has been searching for. Jack couldn't help but chuckle nervously. I'm just a mechanic. Michael's lips curled into a small smile. And that's the beauty of it. Mr. Miller. You don't see yourself as anything more than a mechanic. But that's what makes you perfect for the job. You're not tied to a world of suits and boardrooms. Not yet. You're someone who operates without the usual complications. You're willing to make tough calls when others wouldn't. Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze intense. I'm offering you something no one else would. I'm offering you power, influence, and the chance to make a real difference. Jack felt a strange mix of confusion and curiosity building inside him. What kind of difference? Her voice lowered, the weight of her words almost tangible. Whitmore Enterprises isn't just any company. It's the backbone of a much larger network, one that extends far beyond what anyone could imagine. But right now, it's under threat from people who want to destroy everything we've built. People who don't know the true power behind our operations. Michael stepped forward, pulling out a sleek, black folder and sliding it toward Jack. This is what you'll need to understand. The people who are after us don't play by normal rules. They're ruthless, and they'll stop at nothing to take us down. Jack looked at the folder, his hand hovering above it. Every part of him screamed to walk out. He was just a guy who fixed tires. He didn't belong in this world of corporate espionage, power struggles, and million-dollar deals. But something about the whole situation nagged at him. He wasn't just being offered a job, he was being offered a chance to step into something bigger, something more dangerous, but also something that could change his life forever. Why me? Jack asked, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. You could have anyone. You're offering me power, influence. But I don't have the experience for this. Evelyn smiled. That's why we chose you. You're untainted. You don't carry the weight of the world's expectations like so many others. You act on instinct. You fix things when they break not just cars, but people's lives. Michael leaned in, his tone firm. We're giving you a choice, Jack, one that could change everything for you. Take this opportunity, and you'll be more than a mechanic. You'll be part of something that few people ever get to touch. But be warned, it's not a job that ends once the day is done. It's a life. Jack felt his pulse quicken. Everything inside him was telling him to walk away. But at the same time, the thrill of what she was offering, the danger, the excitement was hard to ignore. He looked down at the folder, weighing his options, knowing that once he made this decision, there was no turning back. This wasn't about fixing tires anymore. This was about entering a world where every move mattered, where trust was rare, and where every choice carried consequences. He exhaled, slowly. What happens if I say yes? Evelyn's smile deepened, a look of approval in her eyes. Then, Mr. Miller, you'll have more power than you've ever dreamed of. And you'll never be the same again. Michael's eyes locked with Jack's, a flicker of something unreadable passing between them. But remember, this is your one and only chance. Once you're in, there's no turning back. Jack swallowed hard. His heart was pounding now, his decision looming before him like an open door. And as he reached for the folder, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything in his life had led him to this very moment. As the heavy silence hung in the air, Jack's mind raced. He could still feel the weight of the folder in his hand, the glossy black exterior that had now become a symbol of his choice. His fingers twitched, but he didn't open it. Not yet. Evelyn and Michael were watching him closely, but there was something else in the room now, an unease that crept through his veins. It wasn't just the decision before him, it was the weight of what he was about to step into. Something told him that accepting this opportunity wouldn't just alter his life, it could end it. But just as he was about to respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the mansion's grand hallway. The door to the study opened, and a figure stepped inside. The man was tall, with a sharp jawline, dark eyes, and a presence that seemed to fill the room. Jack didn't need to be told who he was. He could feel the tension shift. This man was no ordinary player in this game. He was the kind of person you avoided, the type who left a trail of problems in his wake, the kind of person who made everything feel like a threat. "I see you've been having a nice little chat," the man said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. His eyes locked on Jack, studying him like an insect under a microscope. "You must be Mr. Miller," the mechanic with no clue what he's about to get into. Jack straightened, a surge of defiance rising in his chest. "Who the hell was this guy?" Evelyn's face hardened. "What do you want, Cole?" Cole, the man now standing before them, smiled. But it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was cold, calculating, and dangerous. "I want to make sure that he doesn't make the biggest mistake of his life." He turned his attention to Jack. "You think this is some kind of adventure? Some chance for you to step into a world of power? You've got no idea what you're dealing with." Michael's expression remained impassive, but Evelyn's fists clenched. She stepped in between Jack and Cole, her eyes flashing. "We've already made the decision. Cole, it's done." "Oh, it's done. Is it?" Cole's voice rose, the intensity growing. "You think you can just hand out power to anyone who fixes a tire? You think that's enough for you to trust him?" Jack felt the tension thickening, his pulse quickening. The air was electric with the hostility between the two of them. Cole's disdain was palpable, and it was clear he wasn't someone who took kindly to being sidelined. "What's your problem?" Jack finally asked, his voice low but steady. "You don't want me to take the job. Why?" Cole's lips curled into a sneer. "Because I've seen what happens to people who get caught up in Whitmore's mess. They don't come out the other side the same. They end up used, and I'm not about to let you be another pawn in this twisted game." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "You've been against me from the start. Cole, this is my decision. It's my company, and I trust Jack." Cole let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Trust him? You barely know him." "I know enough," Evelyn shot back, her voice filled with steel. Jack could feel the heat between them, but he didn't back down. "So what? You think I'm just going to walk away because you don't like it?" His voice was steady now, and the frustration of the past few minutes was starting to turn into resolve. Cole narrowed his eyes, taking a step closer. "You don't understand what you're walking into. The Whitmore family isn't just about money or power. It's about survival. And not everyone makes it out alive." The words hung in the air like a warning. Jack could feel the weight of the situation pressing on him, but something inside him refused to back down. He wasn't going to let fear make his decision for him. "Then I guess I'll have to find out for myself," Jack said, his voice resolute. "I'm not here for the money. Cole, I'm here because this is my chance. A chance to do something bigger than myself." Evelyn smiled, a flicker of approval in her eyes. But Cole wasn't done. He turned to Michael, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. "Do whatever you want," Cole spat. "But don't say I didn't warn you. Jack Miller won't make it through this." The door slammed behind him as he left, the finality of his words echoing in the room. Jack stood there, breathing heavily, but he was more certain than ever. No matter the threat, no matter what Cole said, this was his decision. And now, there was no turning back. The mansion was quiet again, but Jack couldn't shake the words that lingered in the air. Cole's warning, his claims of survival, of not making it out alive. Those words stuck to him like a shadow. The door had slammed shut behind Cole, but the weight of what he said felt like it was still pressing on Jack's chest. He stood there for a long moment, trying to steady his breathing, trying to ignore the pounding of his heart. Evelyn's gaze had softened, but there was still something there, something unspoken. A flicker of doubt, or was it the uncertainty of what was next? Michael stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his face unreadable. He didn't speak, but the silence between them seemed to carry a weight of its own. It was as if everyone in the room was waiting for something to happen, and Jack felt it, too. "So, what now?" Jack finally broke the silence, his voice raw but steady. Evelyn stepped forward, a determined look in her eyes. "Now, we take a step into a world that neither of us can control. You've made your decision. I just hope you're ready for what comes next." Jack nodded, his stomach tightening. "I'm ready." But as the words left his lips, he wasn't sure. Could he really be ready? There was no going back, and everything had changed. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He wasn't just a guy who fixed flat tires. He was now in the middle of a game he didn't fully understand, one where the rules were unknown, and the stakes were higher than anything he'd ever imagined. Evelyn handed him the folder. "Open it. You'll see what you're stepping into." Jack hesitated for a moment. The folder felt heavier than it should. He opened it slowly, his heart pounding. Inside, there was a thick stack of papers, but one item caught his eye: a single photograph. It was a picture of a man, standing at the foot of a grand staircase, his back to the camera. Jack could feel the cold chill of recognition in his veins. The man in the picture looked familiar, but it wasn't the face he knew. It was the posture, the way he carried himself, that struck a chord. "Who is this?" Jack asked, his voice trembling slightly. Evelyn looked at him, a hard edge to her eyes. "That's Thomas Whitmore, the head of the Whitmore family." The name hit Jack like a punch to the gut. The Whitmores were not just wealthy, they were power incarnate, their reach long and deep, a legacy that spanned generations. To be involved with them was to be involved in something much bigger than he had ever imagined, something darker. Michael stepped forward now, his gaze sharp. "You're not just fixing a car anymore. This is business, dangerous business. And if you think Cole was tough on you, just wait until you meet the people at the top." Jack's mind was spinning. It had all seemed so simple at first, a flat tire, a random act of kindness. But now, he saw the truth. He was standing on the edge of something vast and uncertain. The smile that had been on his face earlier was long gone, replaced by the cold weight of realization. Evelyn didn't wait for him to process. "You need to get in touch with Whitmore's lawyer. He'll tell you what's next." Jack closed the folder, his thoughts a whirlwind. He wasn't sure what he had expected when he walked into this mansion, but it wasn't this. The line between what was real and what was not was blurring, and he was afraid of where it was leading him. "Is this all just a game to you?" Jack asked, his voice strained, his hand still clutching the folder. "Are people like me just pawns in a game of power?" Evelyn's eyes softened for a moment, and she took a step closer. "No, it's not a game. It's survival. And if you want to make it out of this, you need to remember one thing: you have to play the game by their rules, or you lose." The words hit Jack harder than he had anticipated. He had a choice now: accept the world they were offering him, or walk away. But walking away wasn't as simple as it seemed. There was too much at stake. His life, his future, his very soul were now tangled up in this web. Jack didn't say anything more. Instead, he stood, facing the unknown, wondering how far he was willing to go to survive. As he turned to leave the room, he caught a glimpse of the photograph one last time. Thomas Whitmore, the man at the top of this game. Jack didn't know what he would find when he reached the lawyer's office, but he knew this much: the road ahead would not be easy, and there would be no turning back. The next few days were a blur for Jack. The constant ringing of his phone, the ever-present tension, and the never-ending feeling of being watched weighed on him like a heavy cloak. He had stepped into a world that was so much bigger than his old life, and the reality of his decision began to settle deep into his bones. Every move he made now felt calculated, as though every breath he took had been orchestrated by forces beyond his control. When he finally arrived at the lawyer's office, he was met by an imposing building, sleek, modern, the kind of place where million-dollar deals happen behind closed doors. Jack felt out of place as he stepped inside, his worn mechanic's boots against the polished marble floors, the contrast stark. He was no longer just the guy who fixed tires. He had crossed over into something unrecognizable. The receptionist led him into a stark, minimalist office, where a man in a perfectly tailored suit was already waiting. His gaze was sharp, his posture rigid, and he greeted Jack with the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mr. Miller," the lawyer said, his voice smooth but cold. "I trust you're prepared for what comes next." Jack nodded, though his heart was racing. "I don't know if I'm ever going to be fully prepared." The lawyer's eyes glinted, almost with amusement. "No one is. But we'll make sure you're ready enough. You've come a long way already, and there's no turning back now." The lawyer handed him a thick stack of papers, contracts, non-disclosures, financials. Jack scanned the documents, though the details seemed like a blur. His mind was on something else entirely. What was this all really about? What had he gotten himself into? He couldn't help but think back to the moment when Evelyn had handed him that folder with Thomas Whitmore's picture. The name had struck a chord with him. He knew of the Whitmore family's wealth, their power, their ability to influence everything from politics to global markets. But as the lawyer droned on, explaining terms and conditions, Jack's mind wandered. He had been told this would change his life. He had been told there was a chance to be the part of something far bigger. But what if that something was dangerous? What if it was a world where people like him, people with no experience in power games, people who were just trying to get by, didn't stand a chance? Jack's hand hovered over the final page, but he hesitated. There was a gnawing feeling in his gut, a voice telling him that something wasn't right. It was the same feeling he'd had the night of the flat tire, that random act of kindness that had led him here. Was it all just a fluke, or had he been chosen for a reason? And if so, what did that say about him? "Mr. Miller," the lawyer's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you ready to make your mark?" Jack looked up at the man, forcing himself to focus. "I'm not sure," he said quietly. Just then, the door to the office opened again, and in walked Evelyn, her presence commanding, her eyes locked onto Jack. She smiled at the lawyer, then turned to Jack with a look that softened as she saw his hesitation. "Jack," she said, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. But I know you. You're stronger than you think. You've been put in this position for a reason, whether you believe it or not." Jack stood up, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He felt like he was on the verge of something massive, something that could either lift him to new heights or destroy everything he had worked for. But then, as if on cue, Evelyn placed her hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "There's something I should have told you earlier," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Something that no one else knows. Not even Michael." Jack's breath caught in his throat. "What is it?" Evelyn's eyes were serious now, her gaze unwavering. "Thomas Whitmore. He's your father." The words hit him like a punch. Jack's knees almost buckled, but he caught himself on the edge of the desk. His mind went blank, unable to process what she had just said. His father. The man who had been the figurehead of the Whitmore empire. The same man whose face had been on the photograph. "What do you mean?" Jack stammered. "That can't be—" "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Evelyn continued, her voice breaking. "You were kept in the dark for your own protection. Thomas Whitmore, he was part of a world far darker than you ever realized. But when you fixed that flat tire for me, I knew you were different. You weren't just a mechanic. You were his son." Jack staggered back, his mind struggling to make sense of the revelation. The man he had thought was just a mechanic, a man who lived an ordinary life, was now connected to one of the most powerful families in the world. His entire life, everything he had known, had been a lie. Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling. I didn't want you to get caught up in this, but the moment you helped me, you were bound to find out the truth eventually. Jack's heart raced as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of what he had just heard. His entire identity had been built on a lie, but now, everything was different. His father, the Whitmore legacy, and the danger that came with it. His life was about to change, but the question was, how far would he go to claim his birthright?